structured by something much, 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 much deeper. And I've actually written twice now on it. Ideology, right? And I'm not gonna jump right into sort of that. But the mission is itself framed by the ideology, right? My dissertation was on state ideology. This book on genocidal intent covers heavily the role of a specific type of ideology. And what I'm working on now, which I've already completed, I'm now editing, is this next book. It is heavily ideologically influenced. That's the thing that I do. I love ideological analysis. The mission is itself based in the ideology. The American ideology is democracy. It is democracy, period. People will say, oh, Dr. Campbell, you're just indoctrinating, and it's not America's, whatever. I mean, And I do recognize I'm giving this lecture to a global audience, so I don't want to come off as crass, right? And I do have to pause a little bit on the mission, because, so in order to sort of step outside and not just be a puppet or parrot, go USA. For example, when Bush on the aircraft carrier said mission accomplished, not quite a good vibe, right? The mission isn't about, hey, we accomplished the mission. The truth of the matter is that no sovereign nation can ever accomplish the mission. Whatever the mission is. The mission is going to be informed by the ideology, right there. It does, so I do recognize, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for international diplomacy and international relations. I do not want to come off as sort of this arrogant American. That's not my vibe at all. But you do have to grant me the fact, international viewer, please grant me the fact that I'm not an idiot, and I'm not trying to be vulgar in this. But every sovereign nation is going to have their own mission. Does the United States exercise its diplomacy to the best of its ability? I would say now that they got Secretary of State Clinton there, yeah, they're doing a pretty damn good job. Irrespective of the spin cycle of Benghazi and such. But yeah, they're doing a really good job internationally, diplomatically, in my assessment, in my professional assessment. Does that mean that it's, hey, our mission is more important than your mission? Absolutely not, right? We don't live in that world where it's imperialistic and you do what we say. That's not the mission. Democracy is not that mission, right? So I will definitely leave room for disagreement as to the nature of the mission, because it is such a sensitive topic, and I do want to be cognizant of international diplomatic relations. It's by no means that our mission takes precedence over any other nation's mission. And this is why interdependency and diplomatic relations is so important, right? It's precisely because we live in a global world now, and we now need to reconceptualize possibly our intelligence, the function of our intelligence, and thus the demands from our policymakers to facilitate a more global, unified, collective, homogenized mission. That's a whole nother level. But, so I do want to be cognizant, because, shout out to everybody from all over the globe. I'm a naturalized citizen. I was born in Jamaica, right? So I'm international myself. So yeah, the mission, we got to be careful with that. Let's put a little asterisk by the mission. That could be a very touchy subject. And lastly, number 4, organization. You might view the meaning of intelligence in terms of organization. What do we mean by organization? Here's a direct quote. Quote, a cluster of people and organizations which specifically refers to the intelligence community, right? So I gave a link to my previous notes for further discussion, right? This organization, what I mean specifically, isn't organization in the business sort of vernacular. Organization in terms of organizational function. I mean organization in terms of the organization of human bodies. I'm very abstract, right? So when I mean organization, I mean really the organization of physical human bodies based on abilities, shared abilities. These are the nerds, and they know how to program stuff on computers. Put those guys in a room. Guys meaning gender neutral guys and gals. Put those guys in a room. Let them do the program stuff, because God knows I don't know how to do that crap. These are the guys who are really heady, and they can understand ridiculously complex stuff. Put those guys and gals in the room and let them do that stuff. These are the guys who do X and so on and so forth, right? The organization of collective human bodies according to shared ability becomes an organization of bodies. It's a really important point. That's a critically important point, right? So by organization, I do not mean, irrespective of what anybody else says, I don't mean organization in this sort of pedestrian, the organization as in terms of just the business, right? I mean specifically, very deeply, organization in terms of the organization of human bodies into a grouping based on shared abilities. That's specifically what I mean, right? That's specifically what I mean. Okay, so in terms of raw information, then part of the input, if you will, right? Part of the input into the intelligence cycle is just sort of raw information. Just like you might say, before we have a refined product, you have a raw natural resource, right? You take the raw natural resource, you go through a processing, you go through an act of refinement in order to create a purified product. It's exactly the same. The intelligence community gives the purified product, being the deliverable, the intelligence briefing, to decision makers, but they go through that process by first getting raw information, right? Hey, we had, based on some human intel, a realization, you know, a wiretap, an email that we grabbed that such and such is going to happen on such and such a day. That's super important for this other thing. Let's take that raw information and integrate that information into the broader system. Later we'll talk about this because this gets really deep and super complex, and that's the type of stuff that I really like. Right? You can't really make an understanding of how this works without, I've done another lecture series called non-monotonic logic. The entire system is built on that. Every single aspect of the system is built on non-monotonic logic. There isn't truth or falsity as such. It's variations, it's all fuzzy. Degrees of truth or falsity, and the system, the intelligence is consistently changing based on new data. That consistent change within the intelligence cycle is brought in, the change is initiated by the raw information. Raw information comes in, that information changes existing data. For those of you who know my non-monotonic lecture series, this is the ABC murder story. We recognize that new information transforms the existing function of the information, but there is a way to go about transforming this. That's why I love reason so much, because I can rationally change my position without any contradiction given new information. That's the intelligence community. When it's functioning properly, it is the most beautiful system in the world, as far as I'm concerned. Even more so than Wall Street. It is the most beautiful, because it has to adapt based on new information. You got to discard the things that you used to believe because new intel tells me, new raw information tells me that, no, you can't hold that position anymore. Okay, let's change the system. Love it. Right? So raw information is, quote, this is a direct quote, unanalyzed information gathered by operations officers and their recruits, blah, 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 which provides insight into what the information means. Right? The meaning of the information with respect to the global interest and securities of the United States. Now, granted, this book is written in terms of the U.S. I'm presenting this as an international educator, though I am citizen. I have wedded my obligation and my loyalty to the United States of America undyingly. I do recognize that my function as an academic has to be international. It has to be global. So I demarcate Jason J. Campbell, the American citizen, from Jason J. Campbell, the has to be cognizant international educator. So again, I am not presenting this lecture series as a USA policy, blah, blah, blah. I'm not part of the intelligence community. I'm not part of the government. I'm a professor. In terms of intelligence, anywhere in the world, in any intelligence cycle, anywhere, though there may be variations, every single intelligence community on the face of this planet gets raw intelligence, and if they're doing their job right, that raw intelligence has to transform existing data non-monotonically, which I've done a lecture series on that. They cannot arbitrarily, arbitrarily, sort of whimsically hold to positions just because. Then you're not doing intelligence. Then the whole function of your intelligence community is crap. And and we'll talk about that later.